Welcome to Convergence, where religion, leadership, and culture merge. I am Robby White, and I am here with my friend Dr. Eric Betts, and together we work for the Coleman Center here at Athens State University. And again, we find ourselves in this beautiful chapel, Eric, and we have a chance to be together and talk about things that really matter not only to us, but I think they impact all of us. And so I'm really happy that you joined us for this particular episode of the podcast. So today, Eric, I hope that we can talk together about a topic that it's so important. We've talked about a lot of things together across the years, and we've worked together for a lot of years.
Yes.
So today I want to talk with you just kind of heart to heart. I want to have an honest conversation together that I hope will be helpful to those who are listening and watching today. But I want to talk about racism and the death of conscience and what happens when the faith community stays, for the most part, silent in a moment in history when we need the voice of prophets and others who will help us see the moment for what it is and also understand the possibilities that have not yet been lived into, both as a nation and as a people of faith. And so I know that's a large task in front of us. But I want to begin in this way, and then I want to turn it over to you for a minute. But there's a quote, and I know I've shared it with you, but it's Omar El-Akkad, who wrote, "One day, when it's safe and there's no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will have always been against this." And I think historically that has been true. And I think if you speak of history as the present moment, that is being unfortunately lived out in our time, is that people feel that they should speak, they should act, but they're going to wait until it's passed, and then they'll be opposed to it. And I think there's some of that maybe in most of us, that sense of not stepping out, not speaking up. And talk to me about what you think the danger of silence in this present moment, where we are.
Yes, I think that Thomas Merton said it best. And for those who don't know who Thomas Merton is, Thomas Merton was a Trappist monk. As a matter of fact, he was a contemporary of Howard Thurman.
That's right.
And Dr. King. He wrote over 70 books about the relationship between the contemplative life and social transformation.
Yes.
He was a social critic. He grounded in his contemplative life. He spoke out against racism, consumerism, the American illusion of innocence, moral superiority, and greatness. He spoke about the contradictions of America, claiming freedom, justice, and equality, yet being a purveyor of violence throughout the world. And Thomas Merton said something that is brilliant and historical, but not only historical, but also relevant to our time. And he used a phrase that is in alignment, parallel to Dr. King's words. He spoke about and he's mentioned in Albert J. Robideau's book,
That's right.
American Prophets.
Yeah.
And in that book, American Prophets, there are 7 American prophets that Albert J. Robideau highlights. One of those is Merton. And Merton uses the words guilty bystanders.
Yes.
Guilty bystanders. Because getting into the fight is too risky.
Yes.
Getting into the fight costs too much. Vernon Johns, who was the predecessor to Dr. King at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, is said to have said these words: "If you see a good fight, get in it." And we are all familiar with John Lewis's words, "Good trouble."
Good trouble.
And so the moral decay that we see in our world today is because we have more guilty bystanders than we do those who are willing to pay the cost.
That's right.
Of good trouble.
Well, we are, in some ways, at least, from you and I, career-wise, we've both as professors, pastors, working together for Coleman Center, but I can speak from the white church experience, is that we, that is, to be guilty bystanders, people, we have this tendency to not want to get in the fray. We might be misunderstood. People might hear that in a political way. Of course they're going to hear it in a political way, at least from our experience, in that, to be honest, a preacher can't really stand and preach any longer in a pulpit and not be heard through political lens, because so much of the American church, they've come to identify themselves in a political way, as opposed to being, in the Christian, as a follower of Jesus of Nazareth. And, Martin Luther King Jr. also said something. He said silence itself is an act of betrayal.
Yes. When we look at the notion of not being political, the reality is that we're all being political one way or another. If we're silent, if you are silent in the face of genocide, you are being political.
Yes.
If you are silent in the face of military aggression, you are being political. If you are silent in the face of police brutality, you're being political because you are preserving
That's right.
a political system. You are
That's right.
deliberately adjusting to a political system and a political structure that is dehumanizing. But what many fail to recognize is that there's a difference between partisanship and being political.
Right.
Jesus was very political.
Yes.
Because his Nazareth mandate in Luke 4, which is the foundation of his ministry,
right,
said that I've come to preach good news to the poor. That's political.
That's right.
He says, I've come to set the captives free. That's political. He says, I've come to heal the brokenhearted. And while you may think that's spiritual, that's also political.
Right.
So Jesus had a public policy manifesto.
And to declare the day of the Lord's favor.
The day of the Lord's
Jubilee.
favor.
Which is political.
It's political. He told Herod, he told the disciples, when they came asking him about Herod, he said, I don't care anything about Herod. You go tell that fox that I'm going to keep on doing my Father's will today, tomorrow, and forever. And one of the things about this whole idea of being political is very difficult for those in the Black tradition to be dragged into this idea of, oh, you're being political. You know, today we throw words around to try to shut down discourse. Right. Oh, that's Republican speech, that's Democrat speech, that's socialism, that's Marxism. But in the black tradition, in the black church tradition, which one of the foundational pillars is human equality and freedom. Sometimes it can sound political or partisan in this environment.
Right.
But before there was a red state or a blue state, before there was a Democratic Party and a Republican Party, before the United States was even established as a nation in 1798.
Right.
Black intellectuals, black preachers, black teachers were always, before the political scene of today, before the Electoral College, before Jefferson signed the Declaration of Independence,
right,
black people were always speaking against racism, dehumanization,
right,
injustice,
right,
the idea of greed. That has always been a part of it.
That's
so that is in the tradition of Jesus.
Of course,
it has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with right and wrong.
Of course, of course, and yet there's still certain sections of, especially in the evangelical church, but in churches in America today, there are segments of the church where the idea of preaching or teaching social justice is considered anathema. That you don't do that because it's political. What they fail to realize is that actually, if you throw social justice out of the message that a church is proclaiming, you have discarded Jesus along with it.
Yes.
That you don't understand what Jesus was doing, preaching the kingdom of God and repentance. Without you can't understand that without social justice,
yes,
without understanding what Jesus was doing in his work. And so we are living in a time where, good people, church people, who are seeing what's happening around us and with us as a people, as a nation, and who will step back and say nothing, who will pray for peace, but not necessarily for justice. It's easier to want unity without embracing truth. And this is the hard part. That's why this conversation, I think, is so important, is that we need to return to the heart of prophetic leadership in faith communities. We need to learn to speak the truth and to do it with love, in love. Not to shame, but to liberate.
Yeah.
Love that tells the truth is what makes healing possible. And I was telling you a little bit ago, I'm concerned in our times, one, with the silence, the great silence that exists especially in the white church in America, over issues that we're talking about today, racism and other issues as well. And so much of that silence is not only encouraged, but in some ways almost enforced in churches because they want to keep the peace.
Yes.
But you can't have peace without truth and justice. You can't do one or the other in the name of Christ. If there's going to be peace, there has to also be justice. And it's all supposed to be done in love, right? And so I'm concerned for the silence, and I'm also concerned for those who want to speak out and be vocal against the issue, that we have to really guard our heart and soul in this and learn to speak truth in love. It's one thing to speak truth. Sometimes Christians have heard that phrase and they've been more in love with the truth they're trying to speak than they are with the person they are speaking to. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I need you to operate in your highest self.
Yes.
Because when I challenge you, let me put it this way. When you are your highest self, I can be my highest self. It goes back to what Dr. King
Yes.
said, I can't be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be.
That's right.
You can't be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be.
That's right.
So when I speak the truth to you, it is not being spoken to diminish you,
right,
to shame or humiliate you, but it is to call you into your higher self.
Yes.
Because when you are able to live in your higher self, Archbishop Desmond Tutu says we were created to love.
That's right.
And he says when we refuse to love, we diminish our own humanity.
That's right.
So when you function in your full humanity, I can function in my full humanity, and together we're able to flourish. One of the statements you made about the church, Jesus, and justice. Jesus rebuked the religious leaders of his day.
That's right.
Because he said they love the pomp and the circumstance and the rituals. And Jesus said the rituals are fine. He says, go ahead and tithe of the seasoning herbs. Go ahead and do that. But he says there are weightier matters.
Yes.
And he said those weightier matters were justice, faith, and mercy.
That's right.
So he says, you can do all of those other things, it's fine.
Right.
But don't leave the other things undone.
That's right.
So he elevated the whole concept of justice,
Yes.
faith, and mercy above all of the ritualism that exists,
Yeah.
in particularly within American Christianity today.
That's right. That's so well said. You know, when it comes to racism, I think sometimes we look at racism as something that is personal, and it certainly can be, and is, but it's also systematic. It's structural. So it's a system, a cultural structure that advantages some while intentionally dehumanizing others. And it's lived out. It's in some ways encoded. It's in the language we use. It's in the imaging that's used. It's even in theology. And so, last week, the uproar over the social media posts that the president made, and yet still the silence of the large segment of even the American church over this idea that somehow racism, there's a deep-seated history in this. Language that's used, imaging, the images that are used, that imagery has a history as well. The idea that was last week used by the president, that goes all the way back, to white supremacists, the propaganda that was used to justify slavery and segregation and exclusion. And the heart of it is, if you can dehumanize someone or a group of people based on the color of their skin or any other factor, if you can dehumanize them in the language that you use or the way you depict them in the world through images, then you can treat them any way you want and not be held accountable.
Yes.
This is where the silence hurts so badly for the American church, is that when someone or some group of people are dehumanized in some way, the church should rise together in unison and denounce this.
Yes.
It's wrong.
Yes. As anti-Jesus.
Yes.
So when you look at, I wrote in my book, Reconciliation, there's a whole chapter in there, and this is part of my dissertation, about how language has been used throughout history,
Right.
as an ecosystem,
Yes.
that allows for other people to be eliminated, to be dehumanized, and for a whole culture to be destroyed. We think about how in television, how we use the word savage to speak about the Native Americans. And if you grew up watching the Westerns, you would think that the Native Americans were the enemies, and that they were somehow imposing on what the settlers were doing. So when you look at that from the lens of the image depicting, especially in Black History Month, it shouldn't be done in any month.
No.
But in this holy Black History Month, that depicting people who made Black history in our lifetimes.
That's right.
As apes.
That's right.
It takes us back to slavery, where when the slave people were advertised in the newspaper along with cows and sheep and chickens and goats and so forth. It takes us back to where the enslaved were taken from the plantations and put in zoos or forced to perform in the circus alongside monkeys. Many will look at the imagery that we saw and say, oh, that's just a cartoon. But there were cartoons in the 1700s and 1800s as well that we used to dehumanize. This whole trope of depicting Black people as apes is what made Jim Crow possible.
That's right.
Is what made slavery, Jim Crow, Black codes, all of that possible. It made it possible for Walt Connor in Birmingham to use those billy clubs, the canines and the water hoses, the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. So when you dehumanize the people, then you set up a system or a psychology where their lives aren't worth anything.
That's right.
So from that perspective, imagery is also a form of violence as well when it is used for the purpose of dehumanizing.
That's exactly right. And to be silent in that moment is to condone. Regardless, to be silent is to allow the status quo to remain the status quo. Nothing changes with our silence. I mean, racism is wrong, and you are so right in what you said, Eric. In both the images that are used, in the language that is used, and we see this. You mentioned the American Native. We've seen it with the immigrant in this country. The language that the illegal alien is a phrase that is often used, intentionally used. Not undocumented immigrant, but illegal alien. When you start using language like that, you dehumanize people and can then justify the treatment that we often see lived out. We live in a time, I think, Eric, where maybe we've grown calloused to the hurt and suffering of others, or maybe it's, I hope it's not this, because I'm talking about myself now. If you're listening or you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm saying it's either callousness or it's cowardice. That because maybe people think that maybe it costs so much. You mentioned the cost, and that if I speak out or if I say something, one, what difference will it make? And the other is, if someone hears that, they're going to think this, and there'll be a cost with that. But there comes a time in all of our lives when we have to choose to either be silent and remain part of the status quo, or to learn to speak the truth in love, and to learn to live that truth in ways that bring reconciliation and bring justice. You have to decide, who. I think the thing about the American church, we have to decide, are we really going to take Jesus seriously and the work of the kingdom. Some call it the kingdom.
The kingdom, yes.
But are we going to take that work seriously and be a part of that? Or are we just going to give lip service to it and continue to preach just family values and law and order, and let's just keep, the unity, let's keep everything without being controversial in any way?
Yes, and this whole idea of law and order is really about protecting the space of the white middle class.
That's right.
Because if we are Christians, then there is a higher law.
Yes.
And that higher law is a law of love. It's a law of justice. It's a law of human equality. It's a law that says, I'm created in the image of God. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. That is a higher law.
Yes.
And all other laws are subject to that law.
Yeah.
However, we speak about law and order to protect the space of that middle class within this capitalist system that we live in. But it's okay for those who are supposed to be enforcers of the law to break the law, not only the earthly law, but the higher moral law when it comes to the treatment of those who can't defend themselves in the court of law. So this goes back to what Merton says about the illusion of innocence.
Yes.
This is not a country of law and order.
No.
This country flaunts international laws that have been structured to keep the peace in the world. We see how this is happening now with threats to other countries.
That's right.
Uninvited threats.
Right.
But yet we say it's about law and order. So Thomas Merton would say that this is a part of that American illusion about itself.
Yeah.
We want law and order for others. And they love to quote Romans 13 about submitting to the government.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we celebrate the Confederacy, who broke away from the United States of America, broke the United States of America's laws, and we have statues and monuments, and we get upset if anybody says anything about it, but yet we're all about law and order, and we're celebrating the rebels.
You're right. No, that's right. And the other side of that is if you dare speak to the issue of justice and inclusion, fairness, equality, embracing diversity, if you want to speak into this and you are yourself deemed outside law and order, you're a troublemaker, and you're causing issues. And the thing is, for Christians, if you're outside that tradition, every faith tradition, but if you're in the American church, I'm here to tell you, Jesus was a troublemaker.
Yes.
And if you haven't read, then go back and read the Gospels. Jesus caused issues. There are so many things. I think fear and just the desire to hold on to the status quo has so tainted the witness of the American church, at least the white church in America. And I can say that because I'm on the inside. I'm not speaking as a critic from outside of that tradition. I'm speaking from inside that tradition.
Yes.
But I'm here to tell you, the idea that white, and you know this, but white supremacy, it doesn't, in our time, people don't wear hoods and carry torches, but they wear suits sometimes. Preach from pulpits sometimes. It disguises itself in language like we've talked about already. Family values, let's keep the peace, but no talk of justice. no talk of what it means to live and speak the truth in love. And, it's a system that assumes, let's just call it what it is. I will. And I know you'll agree, and I hope, those who are listening or watching, but what Christian nationalism and the rise of white supremacy, it's a system that assumes that whiteness is the norm.
Yes.
And let's also say that it's the attempt, I believe it is the faltering attempt of some to hold on to power and tradition that has in many ways already passed in the world. But the thing is, it decides who gets second chances, who gets profiled, who is protected, who's supposed to be feared in the world. And even more dangerous is when this system is fused with religion. And that's where Christian nationalism comes in. The false gospel that confuses the kingdom of God with national power and becomes a faith of its own. Political partisanship that becomes a religion for some. And this Christian nationalism, it baptizes white supremacy, sexism, racism, violence, all in the name of Jesus of Nazareth, who himself came to bring peace to the world. And I don't know. It bothers me greatly that we drape the cross in the red, white, and blue, forgetting that the cross itself is a symbol of Jesus' opposition to the empire.
Yes, that's why he died on the cross. And
exactly why.
Yeah, it's we often speak about Jesus, and rightly so, died because of his love for humanity and wanting us to be saved.
That's right.
From our own evil. But he also died, his death was also a result of a criminal act.
Yes.
Because he stood up for the poor, he stood up for the disenfranchised, he stood up for those who were cast out and not included in society, because his advocacy for those who were left out and left behind, unfed, unclothed,
that's right,
was disruptive to the system the way that it was. So the cross was also a crime. And James Cone wrote a book called The Cross of the Lynching Tree.
I know that.
And he says that if you don't want to talk about the lynching tree here in America, you best want to be quiet about talking about the cross itself.
That's right.
Because the cross itself was a lynching.
And it just occurred to me, Eric, and this may not, but theologically you'll understand what I'm saying. You could almost say that the people that Jesus invited to the table are the invitations he accepted to the table of people is what led him to the cross.
Yes.
That he broke bread and fellowship with the people that both the empire and the religious institution had put on the margins. That was not something you should be doing as a rabbi.
Yes.
And Jesus intentionally did that, So there's so much here.
But you talked about something earlier. I don't want to move too quickly past this. You said, and it's so true, that many people view racism as individual pathology.
Right.
It's just isolated people. It's not a system. But notice the way that laws are formed, because I know that there are debates about whether or not this is a systemic issue at all. But all you have to do is look at the recent Supreme Court decision, where they said that when it comes to the universities, you cannot look for the racial identity of those who have been historically excluded. You can't look at their race to try to include them.
Right.
But then the same court had a ruling just a few months after that said that you can listen to a person's accent and their skin color when it comes to immigration enforcement.
Right.
I think that is one of the boldest and most in-your-face examples of how this is not just an individualized pathology, but that it is a systemic issue.
Yes, without a doubt. I believe it's deeply systemic in our time. And again, I mean, we can kind of close with this, but you know, when faith communities, when churches choose safety or comfort over courage, you know, quite honestly, in the American church, in the white experience, so often churches have avoided talking about racism because it's deemed just too political. But prophetic leadership has never been about being safe. Jesus flipped the table.
Yes, he did.
He turned an entire system over. Jesus wasn't just turning a table over. He was turning the whole system upside down.
Yes.
And it's what led him, again, toward the cross. The prophets called out the kings. They spoke truth to power.
Yes, they did.
So to follow Jesus is to tell the truth in love. And to speak that in love, and even when it costs, knowing there very well might be a cost with what we say. And so, you know, I want to re-emphasize this idea that to be a prophet is not to shout with anger or hatred. It's to speak truth in love.
It's really a form of weeping. It's not.
Yes.
It's a form of grief.
Yes.
Because the immorality and the injustice is so weighty.
That's right.
It's similar to those who don't want to cry but can't help. The tears begin to flow. And so this grief becomes a public testimony, a public witness.
That's right.
And that's what Thomas Merton and all the other American prophets were all about.
It's so true, you know. So my challenge to myself, to all of us, to those listening, into faith communities, is to rise up in our time. The challenge to rise up and be true to what Jesus was doing in the kingdom and with the work of the kingdom, and to, I mean, you know, where is the church when voting rights are restricted? Where is the church when racist tropes spread through media, politics? I mean, where is the church when acts of injustice or hatred are done to people or groups of people? Where is the church in America? That's the haunting question to me. And that's why Merton, what you said about Merton, guilty bystanders.
Guilty bystanders.
And so I think that is really something we ought to think about, and with our life and the challenge that's in front of us.
Yes. Vernon John's in the Vernon John's movie, in this phrase encapsulates what Vernon John's preached. He was the predecessor to King and Dutch Avenue. In the movie, Vernon John's, before he's led away, at the end of the movie, by the police officers, he said something. He said, "Be afraid to die unless you have done some good for the advancement of mankind." Faith is not just believing that the cross is powerful. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth."
That's right.
Our salvation is not just tied to the cross, it's tied to truth. And the cross is telling the truth.
That's right.
About evil, injustice, greed, exploitation, disenfranchisement. The cross is telling the truth about all of those things. And it is that truth that will set us free.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I agree. We need prophetic leadership in our time. You know, it doesn't ask, what if I speak out, will this upset someone? It asks, what does the Lord require of me in this moment in history? To be prophetic is to act justly. It's to love mercy, to walk humbly with God. That kind of leadership is not about taking sides politically, partisanly. It's about moral clarity. And we need moral clarity in our time. It's about telling the truth. And quite honestly, it'd just be easier to be silent and by silence we're agreeing with a lie. It's about standing up when it would be more comfortable just to stay seated. And, you know, to speak the truth in love. Love for those who are hurting. Love for those who feel excluded. Love for the soul of the nation. I love this country. I know you do. I don't confuse empire with kingdom. But it's a love that dares to imagine a better world. That's what prophets did for us and continue to do for us. They help us to see the reality right in front of us as it is and point us to a better way of living. Something like hope for the future. And unless you cave into despair, it seems to me that that's the kind of leadership we need in our time. And so, we're in this moral moment, a time that sort of demands clarity and courage from us and from all of us. Not later, not until something else happens, but now. Not when it's safe, but now. I think that kind of challenge stands in front of us because history will ask, where were you in this moment? And I don't know, maybe heaven is still asking that question of all of us. So I really appreciate the conversation.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
And I'm grateful for all of you who've listened, who've stayed with us. It's not an easy topic, and I hope that you'll hear it in the spirit in which we try and offer this. That is with humility and love. And we want to serve, but we also want to offer a challenge. And I hope you've heard all of that clearly today. I thank you for joining us at Convergence, and I apologize for my cough. But nonetheless, I appreciate every one of you who've been willing to listen and to watch. And until next time, hope that all of us will do exactly this, to act justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly with God. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.